Yerushalmi and Megillah in Perek Beis Halacha Daled says Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina Omer, Altir HaKadosh Baruch Hu lehasos rosh chola latzadikim la'asid lavo. God will be at the head of the dance procession of the tzaddikim in the final redemption. Matama, where is this learned from? From Tehillim Memches, Shisu libchem l'chela. Turn your hearts towards the chel. The Gemara's darshaning. I mean, this word can mean many things, but the drush of the Gemara is saying that this word is referring to the machol, this dancing of the tzaddikim la'asid lavo. L'chol aksiv v'hatzaddikim marion oso be'etzba, and the tzaddikim they all point to God at the head of the chola. What's interesting to note here is that there is no head of a chola. A chola is a circle, is a circular dance. That's where we get this thing of dancing in a circle from, right? This idea of the chola. The michola is a circular dance, so there is no rosh. So what it probably means is saying that it's at the center in which the circle is converging. That's the idea of dancing in a circle, by the way. This is what it's saying. This is more of a parenthetical comment, but what we learn from this comment is the theme of dancing in a circle is that there's this convergence on the center, which is the Shechina itself. The tzaddikim point with their fingers. Ve'omrim ki zeh Elohim Eloheinu olam voed. That's the continuation of that pasuk in Tehillim Memches. V'hu yenahagenu almus. That's the end of that chapter. Is that line? V'hu yenahagenu almus. He will guide us almus. That word ayin lamed mem vav taf. There's many possible ways of interpreting that. Indeed, in the written form of the Tehillim, when the Tehillim is written in the formal halachic way that it's supposed to be written, that word is divided into two words: al ayin lamed, mus mem vav taf. So there are some with a hyphen, exactly. So there are some mefarshim that explain that word al mus, transcending maves, transcending death, right? But another way of interpreting this, and this is actually what Rashi brings, if I'm not mistaken. Almus is like the word alam. Alam in Lashon HaKodesh is an alternate word for a young person, right? Like alma or alam, right? Alma being a young woman, alam being a young man. So almus means in a youthful manner. God will guide us in the manner that you guide youths. So what does that mean? Okay, so let's go with that interpretation for a minute. What does that mean in the manner in which you guide a youthful person? Almus ba'olamos bizrizos, in a fashion of alacrity. Ki'ilein almos, like you guide, like a young, vigorous youth who has a lot of energy and needs to be guided. Bizrizos, huyanagenu almos. There is a theme in Rav Kook that I don't claim to be an expert in the writings of Rav Kook. I'm a novice like everyone else. But there seems to be this theme throughout Rav Kook's writings, and I've discussed this with other individuals who are much more experts in the teachings of Rav Kook, and I've seen it written in explicit places, that the theme of rest in Rav Kook's spiritual view of the world is a theme that he focuses on a lot. And not just in the context of Shabbat or the prohibitions of work on other days of the year, but in general the place of rest in the spiritual dynamic. And in my investigations into this matter, I've come across the terminology that Rav Kook uses to describe this, and I've heard from several people. Again, I don't want to attribute this to anyone who doesn't want their name mentioned explicitly, but this theme may be the centerpiece in which all of Rav Kook's worldview kind of evolves around. And this idea, Rav Kook, and we'll see inside in a moment, is the dynamic between what Rav Kook calls shleimut vehishtalmut, wholeness and becoming whole. Shleimut is wholeness, and hishtalmut is becoming whole. This constant back and forth of wholeness and becoming whole. And it is the ultimate paradox, shleimut vehishtalmut, because the shleimut is this ultimate cosmic shlemut, which is embodied by God Himself. He has ultimate shlemut. There's nothing left to do. It's just a perpetual state of wholeness. And hishtalmut is everything outside of the Creator. Everything outside of the Creator is in a process of becoming whole. And the secret what we're trying to get to is a place where we are straddling the line between the experience of shlemut, of wholeness, vehishtalmut, and becoming whole, perpetually becoming whole while experiencing wholeness at the same time. That is the ultimate, right? The ultimate goal of our avot. I think we mentioned it two classes ago, the end of the Gemara in Moed Katan, where it says that the reward for the Talmidei Chachamim in their spiritual domain, ein lehem menucha leolam. They have no rest. They never have any rest, right? As it says, yelchu mechayel el chayel. They go from strength to strength. So what this means is not that they don't have any rest, like they're tired and they want to rest and they don't get to rest. What it means is that their experience is one of perpetual growth. They're just locked into this consciousness of infinite and never-ending development and growth. That's where they're locked into. Whereas HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there is no growth, because growth is not a concept that's relevant to Hashem. Hashem is already in a state of shlemut. So the goal, again, we're going to see inside a few examples, the goal of our spiritual work is to get to a place where we are both locked into perpetual hishtalmut, of constant progression, but at the other side, but at the same time, being able to experience a sense of shlemut, a sense of wholeness. I heard from Rav Moshe Schatz, Shlita, who's a very, very important Talmud Chacham in the area of Nistar, who lives over here in Givat Shaul. He was one of the mashpiyim for Rav Itcha Meyer, by the way, one of his rabbanim back in the day. For anyone who knows that reference. Anyway, so he gives the example about, if you have any object that has a certain definition, right? He says, like, take a car, for example. What's the bare bones definition of a car? Okay, so you need 4 wheels and you need doors and you need a steering wheel. Okay, you have 4 wheels, doors, and a steering wheel. You have a car. But is that the ultimate embodiment of a car? Obviously not. There's much more you could do, right? Maybe you could put some, walls around this, make sure people aren't falling out. Maybe you can have a nice sunroof, right? There's more things that you can add after the initial shlemut, after the initial wholeness. There's more than you can add, but there is wholeness there, meaning there is a basic rudimentary wholeness already obtained. There's always more that you can add on to that initial wholeness, but at the baseline, there is a wholeness, there is a fundamental wholeness that has been achieved, right? And to constantly build more and more layers of wholeness, more and more, right? Excellent. Sorry. Okay. The pregnancy, that we should always be this cycle of pregnancy and then birth. He said about like the calf and the bloody door and stuff. You know that? Nachon, on Pesach, right? The theme, right? That the theme of Korban Pesach is embodying the theme of perpetual birth, right? That is a version of what we're discussing. Absolutely. So I just want to read a few sections from the Sefer Shmona Kavatzim. The Shmona Kavatzim is a book of the unedited journals of Rav Kook. Right, other svarim like Arot HaKodesh are heavily edited, not edited like in the censored set, but they're edited in that they're put into some type of linear order that you can kind of like follow the progression. But the Shmona Kavatzim are just aphorisms. Rav Kook would wake up one morning and would just write down what was on his mind. So there's absolutely no order to this at all. They're just short. Most of them are just a few lines. They seem to be in no order whatsoever. But looking at this sefer gives insight into the raw material, so to speak, that was on Rav Kook's mind as he was developing his thoughts. So I'm going to read just two specific sections from Shmona Kavatzim, one from Kovetz Aleph and one from Kovetz Beis. So it says Rav Kook in Kovetz Aleph Taf Mem Gimel. Omer Manu Shahashlemut hamuchletet, the absolute level of wholeness, he mechuyevet hametziut, is absolutely necessary in existence. The ein badavar b'koach, and it contains no potential, meaning everything's been actualized already. There is no dynamic of potential that needs to be actualized because everything's already whole. Ki hakol b'foal, everything is already actualized. Abol yesh shlemut shel hosafat shlemut, but there's beyond this shlemut of complete actualization. Beyond that, there's another level of shlemut, which is being in a perpetual state of growth. Hosafat shlemut, adding on to the wholeness. It's not possible to be in the divine. The divine is not able to have a state of hishtalmut, of growth. It doesn't give a place for any additions. And for this goal, In order so that this form of wholeness, i.e., that there can be additions, that there could be progress, that there could be growth, in order for that to exist, that's why God created the world. God created the world for this other type of wholeness to exist. So Rav Kook is saying that there's really two types of wholenesses. One type of wholeness is shleimut muchletet, absolute wholeness. It's already been fully actualized. And the other type of wholeness is being locked into a constant state of growth. So God created the world in order so that this type of wholeness can exist. Because that type of wholeness doesn't exist inside of him. בצירוף העילוי של נתינת מקום להשלמתה של העילה בלתי פוסקת, in order to create a place, a domain for this process of hishtalmut, which is בלתי פוסקת, it never ends. שזהו עדן מיוחד. This is a unique Garden of Eden, meaning this is a unique paradise to be locked into that state of perpetual growth. שבזה הבריאה משלמת את כבוד בורא. It also, not only is it mashlim itself, it's making itself whole, but it also makes whole the honor of its creator. Meaning, by us being locked into this sense of perpetual growth, we are giving honor to our creator, showing that it's possible to be in this state, that things aren't just static forever. Things are constantly growing and developing and blooming.
I said a unique Canadian. That sounds like the Canadian that uncovered.
Which is the Gan Eden?
They were also had the potential for perpetual growth. I mean, they were tested. They were.
I would say the opposite. I would say that the Gan Eden that they were in was a place where everything was already actualized. They didn't really have. I mean, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point because they're given the mitzvah of la'avda l'shamra. Right? They're given these imperatives to work and to guard the garden, like whatever that means. So, I guess there was room.
Getting tested and they failed, which means they realized that they had more growth to do, and so it wasn't. If it was no more growth, then they couldn't have failed any tests.
One could say that all spiritual human input was contained in that one mitzvah that they had. Like that was it. It's an interesting idea. Meaning, what is the contrast between what he's describing and the original Eden? I would say that it seems to be clear just from the basic understanding of the story that there wasn't so much development there. Everything was already like perfect. That's why it keeps on going on and saying like God saw it was good. It was good. Like it's fine. Just don't mess it up. Like that seems to be the underlying theme. And the test that they were given was more of not messing it up as opposed to making it perpetually better. Right? That's like the sense that you walk away with. No, I mean I think that's the most dominant theme. Do you disagree?
I mean, just the fact that there was a test that they failed. So you're saying, I don't know. It seems like you're calling that not messing it up, but I mean that's the other side of the coin of growth. That if you had grown to the point where we could
right. So we can maybe look at it like this. Right. So we can maybe look at it like this. This is already getting like a little bit abstract and theological, which is fine. But I'm thinking no. This is a fair point that you're bringing up. I think that maybe a good way of looking at it is that there's never a time where you don't have both, right? The idea of shleimut and hishtalmut. The question is, which one is more dominant? Is it more dominant feeling the steady state of shleimut, of things already being whole and not needing to be added on or messed with? Or is the hishtalmut more dominant? The need to act, the need to build, the need to create and be assertive. Like which one is more dominant? I would say that that's a back and forth between Shabbat and the week. Right? During the week, the hishtalmut is more dominant. The progress, the adding, the building is more dominant. And on Shabbat, the shleimut is more dominant. Not that we don't have anything to do on Shabbat. We do have things to do on Shabbat. We have to pray. We have to make kiddush. We have to guard the day. But it's more. The shleimut is more dominant. So it's never that you don't have one without the other. It's just a question of which one's more dominant. I think in Gan Eden, the original Gan Eden, it was like that was more dominant. The shleimut, just being with the wholeness of.
To your point of view, I've always heard this, but I don't know who exactly said it. But there's some narrators that said that Adam was sort of bored or tired of the shleimut. He had achieved the shleimut, and he said, "I want more child. I'm not growing. I need to grow. So let me mess up everything and then
There's
I don't know who
Nachon.
said that, but that was
The
It
Or
is
Chaim
right.
says that with regard to Nesira.
to the right to the
The
Sotan
separation
Asira.
of Adam and Chava. That it was together. They were together, but Adam wanted to have the ability to come together properly. They were going to have, according to certain, or Chaim says that they were eventually going to be separated, but by God. And Adam wanted the challenge, opportunity to create that shalom.
So right, so there are
Face
so
to
there
face.
so there are
I mean,
so there are
a lot of Zohar talks, and therefore he could fail. We could fail. We wouldn't. He would have. He would have been that his talmuz would have been effectuated to shleimus at that point, because that, like he's saying, they were so close to perfection that these were just the few items that they had to do, and
so
But the
yeah.
car was complete.
What?
The car.
no,
Car.
but did it move?
Which car?
The
Right,
car,
the
you
car.
can
Yes,
have
the car is
everything
complete,
complete.
right? But it could be
Just
made
don't
better.
drive it into a wall.
Right. Ah,
Yeah. So
Is it possible? Is it possible that Rav Kook is talking about what happens when you go out and you just have an amazing experience? You just made peace between these Jews and these Jews. They hate each other all the time. You just made peace, and then you turn around and you see somebody that's arguing. Well, wait a minute. You already did something that was so perfect, and now you see two people. Can you do it again? Can you go back? What happened there? In other words, and he's saying you can keep growing. You can keep getting better. Even though you think you hit perfection, you can just keep getting better. You didn't get to God yet. You can keep
right.
who's the guy that thinks that if you made
It's like the
between
intersection.
two people, that there aren't other two people that need that same?
I'm just saying the experience. If you've ever done mediation, if you've ever done people to death, it's a high experience. You know,
Yeah, but
Right.
you ain't. You
I
got
think
more work
that
to
it,
do.
that no, that's a great way. That's a great way of phrasing it. I think it's similar to what we were saying before. That there is the achievement of a shlemut, of a wholeness, and then once you get there, you realize that there's more to do after that. In fact, that original shlemut only gives you insight to the possibility of more ishtalmut. Right, getting to one state of wholeness.
The only separation I want to make is because it's not add-ons. It's the same thing, deeper, better, more of it, something like that. It's more of the same thing, but it's not add-ons. It's not like, oh, and now I have shleimah. Now I can get everybody for dinner. That's not more shleimah.
Right, meaning we could put it this way. This again, we could go very abstract here, but it's not so much a linear hishtalmut, like you see the never ending line of progress, but rather you see you experience the thing as the ultimate, like this goal is that's the ultimate thing, and then you get there, and then it opens up this vista of awareness to more, right? So from God's perspective, let's say, well, forget God's perspective for a second. Let's say like let's say like a bird's eye view, so to speak. There is this infinite line of progress, but from our subjective experience, we don't see that because we don't have any grasp of it. We can't grasp what's beyond our horizon of shlemut. We have a limited perspective of what shlemut looks like. We can't even imagine what's beyond. Right? Like that's something that like the Mefarshim say. The real reason why God told Avram, Lech lecha el haaretz asher areka. He didn't tell him where he's going. He said, "Let's go to where I will show you." Like the real reason is because, in an ultimate sense, I can't tell you where you're going, because even if I told you, there's no way for you to grasp it at this stage. Like start walking, and then eventually you'll grasp what it. Yeah. So that I think this is one of the characteristics of this dynamic of shleimut and ishtalmut. That the further capacity of ishtalmut is only revealed subsequent to one achievement of shleimut. And just riding on the theme that you said, this is an idea that's brought in the Arizal, which is already alluded to, by the way, in the Psukim, specifically the Psukim of Shir Hashirim, that the test of Adam and Chava. This is also brought in Midrashim. Excuse me, I believe this is the Midrash Tanchuma, that they were supposed to wait essentially until Shabbat. Right, that was the whole test. The test was not off limits forever. The test was to wait for a certain, right? This is
Like
the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, right? Basi legani achosi kala. God is saying to the female character, the Jewish people. God is saying, "I've come to my garden, right? The garden. I've come to the Garden of Eden, right? The ochal mipri megadav, and I'm giving you from my fruit to eat." Meaning that was God's plan. God's plan, when we hear Mishalech Bagan L'Ruach Hayom, God is coming into the garden to stroll. What was he coming to do? He was coming to give him the fruit to eat that he had eaten, 1 minute too early. The idea of pushing, of jumping the gun, so to speak, is what it comes down to. And this also feeds in. I'm not sure exactly how it feeds in, but I'm intuiting that it feeds into what we're talking about now, about how you get to the horizon of our grasp of what shlemut is, and only afterwards do we have an understanding of what further shtalmut could be, but not before. Meaning we need to get to an initial shlemut, an initial wholeness, and then from there we can plan out further hishtalmut. But there's this very strong temptation of jumping the gun for further hishtalmut beyond where we are now. That's all I got on that. I've now pushed the bounds of my capacity to think on that one. So we should just continue reading. So this is the second section from Kovetz Beis. Kovetz Beis Shin Yud Ches. Ha'itiyut shebeseder hamitziyut. The slowness that which is characteristic of reality. Ha'agbala shebateva. The confines of nature. Harashlanut hachitzonit shela. The laziness of the externalities of the world. Hatzimtzum sheba'aliyot haruchaniyut, the constrictions that are placed on our spiritual ascents. Ha'arayut shebanisim, which also expresses itself in the mundane experience of the supernatural. Meaning we can experience something that is beyond nature and relate to it as a completely mundane experience. Kol eila, all of these things, the slowness, the drag of the material world, and the laziness which is embedded in it. They are all required for us to have an arena of infinite ascent. Hitalut bilti poseket. Which is the internal foundation of existence, as Rav Kook said in the previous Piscah that we read. The foundation for existence, meaning the impetus for God to create the world to begin with, is that there could be hishtalmut, that there can be progress and growth, that there can be that thing. So in order for that to be possible, God needs to build an arena. It's like in order to play soccer, so you need a soccer field, you need certain things, right? You need the arena to play the game. So what's the arena to play the game of hishtalmut? All of these things. All of these things, the rashlanut, the laziness and the slowness and the constriction, all of those things are the arena in which hishtalmut takes place. And every slow period is preparing the strength with kufa yoter mihira, for a period which is more fast and more alacritous in its ascent. Ad hamihirut hayoter elyon, in order to achieve the highest possible speed. Yinagenu almut bizrizut, as it says in the pasuk in Tehillim, that God will guide us like the almut, bizrizut, with alacrity, kahadein ulemta, like those youths. This is the explanation that Rav Kook is saying to the Gemara that we read a moment ago. That what does it mean that God will guide us like a youth? A youth wants to run, wants to go, wants to do. It has all this pent up youthful energy. It just wants to go. But if you're a responsible adult taking care of a child, right? One way of doing it is just to repress, no, stay put, right? Down, sit down, right? Seinfeld does a thing about when you're young, everything is down. Sit down, right? Everything's down, right? Parents say down to their children, right? Sit down, put that down, yeah? Everything is down. So that's like one way of doing it, which is not good. The other irresponsible way is also, okay, fine, just go do whatever you want. Run in the street, right? Like that's also not good. Kahadenu lemta, to be able to train and to nurture a youth, is to be able to point that vigor in the right direction. That's what it is. So we have all this zrizut pent up in us, which is the creation itself, and the idea it just wants to go. It just wants to progress. But the arena in which God built for that zrizut to manifest itself is iti, it's slow, it's rashlanut, it's laziness, it has all this constriction, all this tzimtzum built into it. But all of that it's not a bug, it's a feature. It was intentionally put there. All of these are features in order to make sure that the zrizut develops in the way that is most optimum to it. Right? Kahadeinu lemta, God is guiding you like a small child. The child just wants to go, he just wants to run. But like, you guide it in the right way. Right. You don't repress it, God forbid. No, it was created in order to go, but you guide it. Right? You guide it in order so that it will develop in the most optimum way. Huh? Bezrat Hashem. Bezrat Hashem.
It seems like that helps to answer the famous question of how can the Jews experience giving the Torah and then the ego, because you're saying God built in the system in the arena that when you see a miracle, instead of being overwhelmed and saying, okay, that's it, I just experienced God, I'm done, there's no more tests, there's no more questions, it wears off, and then you go on your way. Is that what I heard you say? That miracles wear off, and it had to be designed that miracles wear off, or else
for sure there's an element of for sure there's an element of a miracle wearing off. I think that specifically with the Egel, I think the Egel was in a way the opposite. The Egel was an attempt to temper the intensity of the Sinai experience, right? Which is what they said, right? The last interaction that they had with Moshe before he disappears for 40 days is, listen, we can't handle it. You go, have your conversation with God, and then come back and tell us about it. But we can't handle it. And the Egel was a solidification of that. It was an attempt to make more barriers. It's a different, yeah. For sure. But what you're saying is correct. That it's built into the system that we can't experience something externally and have the effect be perpetual and everlasting. It doesn't work that way. Right? The impression of a miracle is not forever. The arayut. It's such a great line. The arayut shebanisim. Right? Like how many? It's just. I mean, we're experiencing these things all the time. It's almost like we're too used to it. It's right. The Jewish people it's become so normal, right? We live in an abnormal world. Nachon, it's nachon, right? It's normal for us is like you see these lines in the Tanakh sometimes, like in Sefer Shoftim, for example. It's like it goes from like one period to another period. It says Latishko ta'aretz shmonim shana, and everything was quiet for 80 years. What? Everything was quiet for 80 years? What do you mean? Like what happened? Like what did they do? What did Yediot Achronot write about for 8 decades?
And what do we learn from that? How do you get there? To me, when I'm looking at the Nach, and he's saying that, and 80 years just go, boom. One letter, one sentence, and then we're fighting again. And there's so much extensive description in into the problem times. Okay.
So I thought we were going to do two, but we'll Bezrat Hashem will at least get through the one over here. The munach etznachta. So the munach etznachta. It's a unique. It's two of ta'amim that have also not only a cantillation, meaning a tune or a melody that's tied to it, but they also perform a syntax function in the pasuk. The munach etznachta symbolizes the middle of the pasuk. It's like a comma of sorts. Now, is it always universally the middle? It's not always smack dab in the middle, but 99% of the time it is. So it symbolizes like a stopping point.
Cynical, but is it munach always there? End of a clause. Is munach always
it's the full name of the tam is called munach etznachta. Usually when people refer to it, they just say etnachta. But technically the full name of it is munach etznachta.
Can you say that if it's in the middle of an idea, it's seldom in the middle of an idea, and if it is in the middle of an idea, then Rashi will comment.
Yeah,
why is it here?
Yes.
Elamai, so there's something to be learned there.
Yes. I should clarify that. That's important what you just said. It's the middle of the pasuk, not in the quantitative sense. Like you have 10 words, so it's going to be on the fifth word. It's saying the middle in terms of the theme of whatever's going on in the sentence.
Mishnah, you have these two parts of each set, many sentences, right? And there's a munach esnachta there.
Correct.
And
So
there's a
it
whole
helps
idea,
divide. It helps divide the structure of the
positive or
sentence
the negative,
for sure.
or any
Yes.
other division.
Yes.
But in the Torah, that Rashi does comment that the munach is in the wrong place sometimes.
The munach esnachta. Yes. Yes. Correct. Correct.
If this is the
So
idea, Elamai, the Gemara then says that.
So there are a few instances where there's actually a machlokas of the Rishonim where the etnachta is supposed to be, and that has implications for the meaning of the sentence. Yes, there's a great example. I could show you inside after we close this discussion, but just for purpose of this conversation, there are questions. It's like in English. I think someone said a second ago where you put the comma, right? It's like the sentence, right? Eats, shoots, and leaves, right? So what does that mean? Eats, shoots, like bamboo shoots, and then leaves, or eats, shoots, and leaves. It depends where you put the comma. And that's right, the comma has massive implications for the meaning of the word. So it's the same thing as the etnachta and has implications for it. It's a really good example in Parshas Truma describing the structure of the menorah, which is a real halachic discussion about how the menorah is fashioned, and depending on where you put the esnachta in that pasuk, it depends on it gives insight as to if certain designs are only on the top part of the menorah, or if they're also in the center part of the menorah. It's an interesting discussion. What was that? What? Where?
The Lord has the sacrifice, my son, whatever the exact.
Nachon, right. Elohim yareh es haseh, right? Le'olah b'ni, right? Le'olah, comma b'ni,
b'ni or
correct.
B'ni.
Nachon. Yafe. Okay, so it's nachta. Chush hamenucha b'melono amo, the sense of rest. We've talked about rest a few times in previous timing because we've done the regular munach, but here he's going to give a slightly different angle based on what we've been talking about until now. So the sense of rest in its full sense, in its fullness. Kashem shebemekoro hu maleh atzmiuta shel hod hamenucha. In the same way that in its source, the source of rest. In its full force, shel hod hamenucha, with the glory of rest, ma'atsemet ha'akshava shel razei hamanoach. It strengthens the ability for the one who's resting to hear his inner secrets. Asher rak ba'olamei ad asher lakodesh hakodoshim sham machon l'shivtam. Because those secrets are in like the Kodesh HaKodashim, like the inner recesses of his consciousness, and only when he's achieved complete rest is he able to hear them. So he's saying that the benefit of rest is to be able to block out the noise, basically, to block out the background noise, and you're able to hear the inner secrets of yourself, which are in the Kodesh HaKodashim, the inner sanctum. Kain tavo hargashat hamanoach, like the experience, the feeling of the one who's resting. Achrei rav kashev shel hamonei dunim, after listening to many different, let's say, delights, meaning listening to the different cantillations that came before it. Shel shitfei higyonim, the flow of the different themes. Right, he's referring to all the cantillations that came before in the first half of the pasuk before the etnachta. Shemerov mitkan, because of their sweetness, tale gam ken lifamim haneshama v'tichpotz kvar b'nefisha pnimit. Right, it after taking in all of the messages that preceded it, so it desires to sit and take a break, take a break internally. The nefisha zu tarik elea et birkat hamenucha. And this break that it takes, right, this nefisha, this holiday, let's say, this break, breather, yeah, there you go, right, the breather. That's very interesting that nefisha actually means that in Lashon HaKodesh. Very interesting. I never thought of that. Yeah. That's very good, very, very good. Yeah, the nefisha, the breather, tarik eled birkat hamenucha. It pours over the person the blessings of rest. She me'ein hamanoach va'atzmo. It is of the rester himself, as we said in the beginning, meaning the blessing of rest is to be able to listen to oneself. And this theme is very tied to and expressed by the etnachta. It indicates the satiation, the noble satiation, hadoreshet domit kodesh, which calls out or yearns for a holy silence. Holech kav yashar b'shifat hod hachayim, with it is represented by a straight line, b'shifat hod hachayim, with the outpouring of the glory of life, hamit pashet mimenu or negohot kamara keshet, which then expresses itself in the additional lines, which seem like a bow. Meaning you have the straight line on top, as you can see, and then there are two lines on either side that have the shape of a bow. Hamaz kirim. So what is that alluding to? These two lines on the bottom that look like a bow. Et hakeshet asher ba'anan b'shalal no'orav. That, right, the original bow that appeared to Noach after the flood, b'tzava'av kulam shel hakeshet, all the different, the full spectrum of colors in the rainbow. Mazkirim et kol ha'agoy b'chevyon ha'idun. All of the different themes that are hidden or placed within the gentility and the delights. B'riboy hagvanim, in their many different shades and full spectrum. V'zohar eden hanoi b'hatiferet b'hatamat ha'yefefiyut. Wow, that's quite poetic. The Zohar, the glistening light of splendor. Hatiferet b'hatamat ha'yefefiyut, which makes whole the beauty of the thing. So the thing is, right, basically what he's saying is that the reason that the keshet is aesthetically pleasing is because it has so many colors. That's what makes it nice. It's not just, the nice red light or the nice yellow light. It's the fact that there's the full spectrum of light all shining there together. That's what makes it uniquely nice. Uma'amikahi ha'etnachta et adnat hamanoach. The etnachta, it deepens the delight of the one who's resting, umashre bo et or hamenucha, and gives within it, permeates within it, the light of rest, ha'atzmit, of self. As we said before, it's rest of self in order to block out all the noise that's being created by the externalities of the person. Shekviat talei hata'anugim ha'elyonim merosh mikadmei olmei ad, which ascends from the heights of the infinite. Okay, so that was very poetic, very, very nice. Just to break this down in light of the themes that we were talking about before. There's the two themes of rest that Rav Kook is alluding to over here. There's the rest in its objective or ultimate sense, in the idea that the thing doesn't need any more progress at all. It's just, it has arrived. It's the sense of complete rest where there's nothing more to do. But then there's the rest that's achieved after something has been done, a rest that comes after a sense of accomplishment. So that Nachta, in an interesting way, is blending both of those two things together. It comes in the middle of the pasuk after the person, as Rav Kook said, has become satiated by all of the melodies that preceded it. So you have all the melodies that came before the first half of the pasuk. So you're now satiated and have a sense of accomplishment. And then you can have rest. You can have this, okay, I did something, and have this rest of satisfaction. But it also ties into the rest in the ultimate sense, in the sense that everything has already been actualized and there's nothing left to do, period. That's something, we've talked about this before, if I remember correctly, that this is part of what is meant to be accessed on Shabbat. And the idea of Shabbat is to like which day of the week is it for God? For God, it's always Shabbat. It's always Shabbat all the time. Right? That's the secret. This is a bit of a tangent, but not really. Right? Like the poem that we say on Shabbat morning, Yismach Moshe b'matnat chelko, that Moshe was so joyous, he was overjoyed when he went to Sinai and received the Luchos. Right? He eved ne'eman karasalo, and God called him his loyal servant and gave him access to all of the inner sanctums of God's house. Right? And he brought down with him these two luchot, and it says on the luchot that you should keep Shabbat. It seems a little bit like what does that have to do with Moshe like going up to the mountain? Okay, so he has the luchos, and it happens to be that that Shabbat is on the luchos. But like, why are we mentioning this? The reason that we're mentioning it is because Moshe goes up to the mountain and he sees that where God is, it's always Shabbat. It's Shabbat all the time. So he brings down these luchos. He's like, guys, you'll never believe what I experienced up there. If you want to experience that once a week, you can have an access point to what it's like up there. That's the whole point of that little insert there. Yeah. So for Hashem, there's this ultimate perpetual rest all the time because everything is already whole and completed. That's one type of menucha, right? That's the menucha atzmit. But there's also a menucha that comes after progress, right? So there's the joy of ultimate, objective, cosmic rest, right? God's rest. But then there's the joy of rest that comes after accomplishment, that comes after doing. So the Etznachta joins these things together. And Rav Kook explains symbolically that this is why the Etznachta is made up of two lines. One is a straight line that symbolizes like just the direct ascent up to the transcendent. That's like the ultimate rest. And then there's this other line that looks like a keshet. And what's the symbolic significance of a keshet, of the rainbow? The rainbow, it embodies the full spectrum of everything. It has a beauty because it has brought together all the potential of everything together, and that's right. That gives it its aesthetic beauty. Everything has been brought together. So similarly, once we traverse like the first half of the pasuk, before we get up and schlep through the second half of the pasuk, right, we're able to take a nefisha, a breather, right, as Ephraim said, we're able to take a breather and have joy over the right after the first half of the pasuk. You might not think that reading half of the pasuk is such a big deal, but let's take it symbolically, right? Like the first half of the pasuk could be the first half of the project, the first half of the job, the first half of the journey, right? After the first half of the journey, there's the etznachta of looking back and taking joy over the progress that's been made, the joy of the hishtalmut, of the progress, but there's also the opportunity to tap into the joy of the shleimut, because there is a shleimut that's been achieved, right? As we said, the whole point of the etznachta is that okay, you've gotten something, right? There's like a theme that's been said. Now you can move on to the second half. Like there's something here, right? You've achieved a certain type of shleimut now. Yeah.
Sorry, it just seems clear to me, and I'm just completely not understanding. But it seems to me that the plus is the anaka, and the shleimut is the sof pasuk.
That's a good.
When you see the sof pasuk, now you're going to understand what the anaka is about.
Very, very good. That's very interesting. I don't know how this is going to tie into the Sof Pasuk. I guess we have to wait till we get there. I haven't read ahead. I promise. I don't know what he's going to say, but I think the insight that he's bringing is that the etznachta, the chidush, so to speak, of the etznachta is the fact that it's straddling both themes simultaneously. Like the Sof Pasuk is just the end. There's no middle Sof Pasuk. Sof Pasuk by definition is the end. Correct. You're saying that like retroactively you understand the whole thing. That's the Sof Pasuk. I hear you. Very interesting. I guess I will have to wait till we get there in order to see what he has to say about the Sof Pasuk.
I'm not confused, but a week or two ago we talked about a personality where it doesn't rest, and then we talked about
the Talmid Chacham. We're saying that he's in a state of constant right. So what he's saying is that the goal is to straddle these two experiences simultaneously of wholeness and infinite progress at the same time. That's the ultimate goal. Not to sink into adishut of inaction because there's nothing left to do, but at the same time not to be stressed out all the time that we constantly need to progress in order to feel like we have to justify our existence. But to be able to straddle both of these things simultaneously is the ultimate goal, or as Rav Kook said, shleimut, integrated into hishtalmut at the same time.
I apologize.